What happens when one of Australia's most beloved wildlife conservationists walks into what he thinks will be a friendly morning show chat, only to realize he's stepped straight into an ambush? You're about to see one of the most jaw-dropping live television meltdowns of the decade. And trust me, it only gets worse from here. Before we dive into this absolute train wreck, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you think about hosts who don't bother doing their homework. Because what you're about to witness, is exactly why preparation matters. Robert Irwin, son of the legendary Steve Irwin, showed up to The View expecting a warm segment about his new wildlife documentary and conservation efforts. He spent the past few weeks charming audiences on every major talk show, smart questions, enthusiastic crowds, and Robert's signature blend of passion and humility. Every appearance had been smooth. But Joy Behar had other intentions. The moment Robert stepped on stage, something was off. The usual friendly welcome was replaced by a stiff, almost predatory smile from Joy. The co-hosts sat strangely quiet, as if they sensed what was coming but had no power to stop it. Robert, polite as ever, waved to the audience, completely unaware that he'd just walked into a trap. "Welcome back to The View," Joy announced, her tone carrying a sharp edge the audience didn't catch yet. "We're here with Robert Irwin, wildlife conservationist and son of the late Steve Irwin." Then she leaned forward. "Now, Robert, I have to ask you something that's been bothering me for a long time." Robert shifted subtly in his seat, media training mode activated, yet his smile stayed in place. "Of course, Joy, I'm happy to answer anything." "Good. Because I've watched your interviews, your documentaries, your entire public persona." Her eyes locked onto him with a hunter's focus. "And I have to wonder, aren't you just riding your father's coattails? What have you actually done on your own?" The studio went dead silent. The camera caught his smile falter just slightly, but he recovered almost instantly. Years of questions about his father's legacy had prepared him for this. "Well, Joy, I understand why some people might feel that way," he said evenly, though tension crept into his voice. "But I've been working in wildlife conservation since I was a child. I've helped rescue thousands of animals, developed breeding programs for endangered species, and dedicated my life to continuing the work my father started." Joy wasn't even listening. "That's my point," she snapped. "You're continuing his work. Where's your originality? You come out in khakis, talk about animals, smile for the camera. Aren't you just playing dress up? Don't you think it's time to find your own identity, instead of living in Steve Irwin's shadow?" The co-hosts exchanged uneasy looks. Whoopi Goldberg looked like she wanted to jump in, but Joy was in full attack mode. Robert inhaled slowly. "Joy, with respect, conservation isn't about ego. It's not about building a personal brand. It's about protecting animals and preserving habitats. Whether I'm continuing my father's work or charting my own path, the mission remains the same." "Oh, please." Joy actually rolled her eyes. "That's a convenient answer. I think you're scared to step out from behind your father's reputation because you know you can't make it on your own. You're 20 years old, Robert. When are you going to grow up and stop playing with animals?" Something shifted. The media-trained smile vanished. His jaw tensed. His hands gripped the arms of his chair. And when he spoke, his voice carried a gravitas that froze the entire room. "Playing with animals?" Robert repeated, his Australian accent sharpening. "Joy, do you have any idea what my work actually involves? Last month, I helped save a mother koala and her joey from a bushfire. The breeding program I helped develop has reintroduced echidnas to regions where they've been extinct for 30 years. Joy opened her mouth, but Robert wasn't done. "You want to talk about growing up? Let me tell you what growing up looked like for me. I grew up watching my father get bitten by venomous snakes while relocating them away from populated areas. I grew up helping my mom run a wildlife hospital that's treated over 100,000 injured animals. I grew up learning that conservation isn't a game or a career strategy, it's a responsibility." The air went electric. The audience didn't move. Even the co-hosts looked rattled. But Joy, misreading Robert's passion as weakness, decided to push further, making what would soon become her biggest mistake of the entire interview. "Look, Robert, I understand you're emotional about this," Joy said, her voice dripping with a condescension that made viewers at home physically cringe. But emotion doesn't change facts. She leaned back, smug, certain she had regained control. The fact is you're famous because your father was famous. Without the Irwin name, you'd just be another kid in khakis playing with animals in a zoo. And maybe it's time you accepted that, and found a real career. Robert went absolutely still. Not frozen, not stunned. Still. The kind of stillness that animals recognize right before something decides whether to run or fight. And Robert Irwin was very much his father's son. A real career, he echoed, his voice soft enough to hush the room but carrying a weight that made every person on set lean in. Joy, do you know what my father was doing when he died? The question hung in the air like a trap Joy hadn't seen until she was already in it. For the first time since she launched her ambush, discomfort flickered across her face. But Robert wasn't invoking his father's death for sympathy. He wasn't trying to score points. He was setting the record straight with surgical precision. He was filming a documentary about stingrays, Robert continued, his voice growing stronger, steadier. Not for fame, not for money, but because he wanted people to understand that even the most feared creatures in the ocean are just trying to survive. He paused only long enough for the gravity of his words to settle. He died doing what he loved. But more importantly, he died trying to make the world better for animals who can't speak for themselves. Robert, I didn't mean, Joy tried. No, he cut her off, the authority in his voice unmistakable. Let me finish. You could have heard a pin drop. You want to talk about real careers? Fine. My father could have made millions turning crocodile wrestling into a circus act. He could have turned Australia Zoo into a theme park. But he didn't. He chose education. He chose research. He chose to make people care about conservation. The camera captured the exact moment Joy realized she'd wildly misjudged him. She hadn't been interrogating a naive 20-year-old kid. She'd been poking a tiger. And every single day, Robert said, leaning forward now, I wake up and try to live up to that legacy. Not because I'm riding coattails, but because the work matters. The audience murmured, sensing the momentum shift. Do you know how many species have gone extinct just in the minutes we've been sitting here? Robert asked, eyes locked on Joy. Do you understand that there are animals alive today because of conservation programs my family built? Whoopi Goldberg stepped in gently. Robert, we appreciate your passion. I think what Joy meant. No, Whoopi. Robert didn't even look away from Joy. I know exactly what she meant. The air crackled. She tried to diminish my work and my father's legacy because she thinks conservation is just playing with animals. She thinks passion makes my career less legitimate. She thinks youth equals incompetence. Joy finally spoke, but her tone had softened, defensive where it had once been bold. Robert, you're overreacting. I was simply asking legitimate questions about your career path. Legitimate questions? His voice rose, not yelling, just finally unrestrained. Joy, you told me I was playing dress up. You told me I didn't have what it takes. You told me to find a real career. Would you ask David Attenborough if he was playing with animals? Would you tell Jane Goodall to get a real job? That landed like a punch. Even the audience visibly shifted, heads shaking, murmurs rising. Joy scrambled. Look, Robert, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was just exploring whether young people feel pressured to follow in their parents' footsteps. No, Joy. There's been no misunderstanding. The words came fast, precise, unflinching. You said I was afraid to step out of my father's shadow. You said I don't have what it takes on my own. You said conservation isn't a real career. Whoopi looked like she was calculating exit strategies. Sarah Haynes stared at her notes. Alyssa Farah Griffin fidgeted with her earpiece. But Robert wasn't slowing down. You want to know about pressure? He said, his voice low and searing. The pressure isn't living up to my father's legacy. The pressure is sitting here listening to someone who hasn't spent 5 minutes researching my work tell me that conservation doesn't matter. The room went silent. The pressure is explaining to someone who gets paid to voice opinions why saving endangered species is more important than television ratings. And for the first time all morning Joy had no comeback. Joy's face flushed a sharp, angry red. Now wait just a minute, young man. No. You wait. Robert's interruption cracked through the studio like a whip. His voice carried an authority so sudden and so unmistakable that every person present went rigid, as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. "I've been polite. I've been respectful," he said. Each word clipped, measured, controlled. "I've answered your questions, even when they were clearly designed to make me look bad. But I am not going to sit here and let you insult my father's memory or diminish work that literally saves lives." A suffocating stillness settled over the studio. No murmurs, no whispers. Even the air felt like it had stopped moving. The co-hosts stared at the table. None of them wanted to be part of what was unfolding. Joy, for the first time in the entire segment, looked genuinely unsure of herself, eyes darting, throat tightening, her confidence cracking. "I never insulted your father's memory," she said. But even she seemed unconvinced by her own words. "Really?" Robert's eyebrows rose sharply. "You said I'm living in his shadow. You said I'm afraid to make it on my own. You said I'm playing dress-up in khakis pretending to be him." He leaned in, voice low and lethal. "If that's not insulting his memory, then what exactly would you call it?" Joy opened her mouth, maybe to defend herself, maybe to pivot, but Robert wasn't finished. Not even close. "And here's what really bothers me, Joy." His tone sharpened again. "You're sitting here attacking a 20-year-old who has dedicated his life to conservation while you make a living giving hot takes on television." Joy stiffened. The audience collectively inhaled. "You want to talk about real careers?" Robert continued. "You want to talk about making a difference? Then answer me this. How many animals have you saved? How many species have you helped protect? How many young people have you inspired to care about something bigger than themselves?" A deathly silence swallowed the room. In the control booth, the producers were undoubtedly shouting conflicting instructions, but none of them dared cut away. Joy looked stunned, bruised by the force of his words. The co-hosts exchanged glances that screamed, "We have never, ever seen anything like this." But Joy Behar didn't back down. She never had. And even now cornered, visibly rattled, she chose defiance. "You know what, Robert? I think I touched a nerve. And maybe that's exactly what needed to happen. Maybe you do need to hear that not everyone thinks you're special just because of your last name." That did it. Robert Irwin snapped. The change was instant, like watching a storm roll in without warning. His hands clamped the arms of his chair so hard, his knuckles blanched white. His jaw tightened until the muscle jumped. When he spoke, his voice came out low, controlled, and terrifyingly steady. "Special because of my last name." A quiet so deep it was almost physical fell over the set. "Joy, do you have any idea what you just said?" Joy finally seemed to register she had crossed a line. "Robert, I think we should." "No, absolutely not." He rose in one smooth, decisive motion, towering over the panel. The energy in the room shifted violently, raw, electric, impossible to look away from. "You just told me that people think I'm special because of my last name. My father's name. The name of a man who died trying to make the world better for animals." He stepped toward the center of the stage. The cameras followed automatically, almost reverently. "So let me tell you exactly what that name means to me." Every lens, every microphone, every beating heart locked onto him. "That name means getting up at 4 in the morning to help deliver baby animals because nature doesn't wait for your schedule. That name means spending your childhood learning the body language of crocodiles because one mistake could kill you. That name means watching your father get attacked by the very animals he was trying to protect and never once hearing him blame them." "Robert, please sit down," Joy tried weakly. "I'm not sitting down." His accent thickened, the emotion finally breaking through. "You wanted this conversation? We're having it." He took another step forward, intensity radiating from him like heat from pavement. "That name you think makes me special? It also means growing up knowing millions of people are watching every move you make, waiting for you to fail, waiting to say you'll never measure up. It means carrying the weight of a legacy that changed how the entire world sees wildlife conservation." The audience was frozen. Recording. Witnessing history. "But you know what, Joy?" Robert's voice rose now, passion spilling over like a tide. "I'm not ashamed of that name. I'm not afraid of that legacy. Because every time someone tells me I'm just riding coattails, every time someone like you tells me to find a real career, it reminds me exactly why this work matters. A final beat, a quiet, devastating one. It reminds me that some people in this world would rather tear others down than build anything that lasts. Joy's face was now a blotchy, furious red. Whether from embarrassment or anger was impossible to tell. "Young man, you need to calm down and show some respect." "Respect?" Robert repeated, his voice cracking with incredulous disbelief. "You want to talk to me about respect?" He stepped closer to the host table. Off camera, a security guard shifted subtly forward. "You ambushed me on live television," Robert said, his voice rising with each word. "You attacked my character, my work, and my father's memory. You told me to stop playing with animals and get a real job. And now you want to lecture me about respect?" The studio was so silent you could hear the cameras refocus. "Let me tell you something about respect," Robert continued, heat and heartbreak braided together in his voice. "Respect is doing your research before you drag someone onto your show. Respect is asking questions that matter, not creating drama so you can trend on social media. Respect is understanding that some things are bigger than your personal opinions about someone you've never even met." Every pair of eyes in the room was locked on him. Even the hosts looked frozen, as if they'd just witnessed a studio light crash down from the rafters. "I came here to talk about wildlife conservation," he said, emotion trembling under every syllable. "To talk about species dying as we sit here arguing. To talk about research programs that could save entire ecosystems. And instead, you turned this into a personal attack because you thought making a 20-year-old squirm on television would be entertaining." Joy's voice finally returned, thin and defensive. "That was never my intention." "Your intention doesn't matter anymore," Robert cut in, swift as a whip. "What matters is what you did. What matters is that millions of people just watched you tell someone who's dedicated his life to conservation that his work doesn't matter. What matters is that you used your platform to tear down instead of build up." He paused, drew in a breath, and when he spoke again, the fire in him settled into something steadier, deeper, dangerously calm. "My dad always said the most dangerous animal in the wild isn't the one that attacks you. It's the one that makes you forget why you're there in the first place." He stared at her, unblinking. "Well, Joy, congratulations. For a moment, you almost made me forget why I do this work. You almost pulled me away from protecting the animals who can't protect themselves." Joy's face fell. The realization was unmistakable. She had utterly, irrevocably lost control of the moment. "But here's what you didn't expect," Robert said, his voice strengthening again. "You didn't expect that I actually believe in what I do. You didn't expect that this isn't a career, it's a calling. And you definitely didn't expect that I learned from the best teacher on earth how to deal with people who can't understand that some things are bigger than their egos." He unhooked his microphone pack with calm, deliberate movements. The signal was unmistakable. This interview was over. "So thank you, Joy," he said, placing the pack on the chair. "Thanks for reminding me why this work matters. Thanks for showing everyone what it looks like when someone attacks conservation for the sake of entertainment. And thank you for giving me the chance to tell millions of people that wildlife conservation is not a game. It's not playing with animals. And it's definitely not something you do for fame." Robert turned to the camera, eyes blazing. "If you're watching this at home and you care about wildlife, if you want to support real conservation, please look up the work we're doing at Australia Zoo. Because unlike some people," his gaze slid sharply back toward Joy, "we're actually trying to make the world better, not just talk about it." And with that, Robert Irwin walked off the View set, leaving Joy Behar speechless, the other hosts stunned, and an entire audience of millions witnessing one of the most powerful, unfiltered defenses of conservation ever broadcast on live television. The camera lingered on Joy's stricken face for several brutal seconds, her usual quick wit nowhere to be found. By the time the show finally cut to commercial, the damage was carved in stone. Robert Irwin had just delivered a masterclass in standing up for what you believe in. And Joy Behar had learned the hard way that some people refuse to be bullied no matter how big the stage. What did you think of that explosive confrontation? Have you ever seen someone stand up for their beliefs like that on live television? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible moments like this one. Because when passion meets principle, you get television gold like what we just witnessed.